everyone, and welcome to the Cinematic Schematic, the official podcast of the Cinematropolis.com. I'm your host, Caleb Masters, and it has been a hot, wet American summer in Hollywood, and I am so glad to be back talking about Quentin Tarantino's latest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We're going to be doing a few different things in today's talk. First, we're going to talk about some of the movies we've been watching in the last month, because wouldn't you believe it, it's been over a month since we've had a full episode come out. So we're going to catch up on the films we've missed, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some cool news that broke here at our home state of Oklahoma. And then we're going to jump into a spoiler-free review of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And of course, I won't be doing it alone. As always, I'm so thrilled to be rejoined by my co-host, Laron Chapman. Laron, welcome.
Thank you. It's always good to be here. It's the highlight of my month, I will say. I say that genuinely.
I'm flattered. This is summertime. It's busy.
Sure.
We all went very hard. Dead Center was in June. We had a
48-hour film race was immediately after that.
Yeah,
so, it was a busy. It's been a busy couple
summer.
of months.
Yeah, I promise you, people, at least one podcast a month, if not more. And we were not going to miss a chance to talk about Quentin Tarantino's new film. I mean, this is an event.
This is an event film. Yes, they only happen every couple four or
5
years.
Yeah,
so.
This is the first time we've talked about a Quentin Tarantino movie together.
I think so. Yeah, for sure.
So exciting. And I have
on live, we should say.
Live, yes. Yeah. Recorded for the public's listening ears. Yeah. We've recorded many podcasts that didn't get recorded on this topic.
That is generally our relationship, yes.
All right, Laron. Well, I'm so excited to jump into that with you. But first and foremost, I do want to remind our listeners, before we get into the thoughtful conversations on film from Planet Thunder Productions, you can find the Cinematic Schematic and more episodes of the podcast over at the Cinematropolis.com. We also have a bunch of written essays. If you want to go catch up with films that we liked earlier this summer, you should check it out there. And you can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Cinematropolis or on Twitter at The Cinematrop. But without further ado, Laron, me and you have some catching up to do.
Sure.
Because there's been a lot of movies that have come out since we last talked. And first and foremost, I want to jump into a movie that kind of came out of nowhere. It wasn't on my radar until it was. And even then, it was still quietly on the radar.
Sure.
And then I was like, oh, crap, I got to catch this before it's not in Oklahoma anymore. And that is The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
We built these ships, dredged these canals, in the San Francisco they never knew existed. This is our home. You two stick together.
I always come back to the old house. What if it's empty? What if we just peeked inside? We could throw parties. You could put on one of your plays. We could yell.
What is this house?
Our old house.
That's not your old house, and that's not your neighborhood.
It played at our AMC that kind of tends to shepherd the indie films, Quail Springs. It was there for about a week and a half, and then it poofed, and I was like, oh no, I missed it. By the grace of Rodeo Cinema, it arose from the ashes, and I was able to catch it at a Tuesday matinee. I took a personal day and went and saw this movie, and let me tell you, it was the best use of my personal day in a long time. And so I just want to get your take on the film, because I feel like this is a movie no one's talking about really that much.
Yeah, I feel like the marketing for this was similar to like Martin Scorsese's Silence. That's what I'm kind of comparing it to, where it's a film that is definitely worth your time and definitely something that should have been on everyone's radar, but I literally hadn't heard of it, and I absorb film content daily. So
I feel like this is like that saying from Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl: the only people who know where it's at are the people who've been there. That's what it felt like, because to your point, I don't think I had seen a single trailer,
anything.
Thank God for Twitter.
Right,
I never would have discovered this movie.
Twitter. Well, honestly, I'll say it was the Burns brothers of all people that got me onto it, and then saw a poster for it. And I was like, why don't I know about this? And I saw the trailer, like, that looks amazing. And it was. So, no, I think this is a visual poem of a film. You know, I've kind of it's very lyrical. I've kind of described it like it has a music-like quality to it. Yes. The way it's told through sound and music and culture and just lots of rich colors and what have you. So the way they extract emotion out of this very kind of personal story, you know, about the kind of damaging effects of gentrification in San Francisco and what that has. What impact that has on preserving certain cultures and certain subcultures,
or just people who have been, you know, their third, fourth, fifth generation San Franciscans, right? Like, sure. What is this doing to those people, right?
To those people, exactly. There's a really powerful sequence there in whenever he's talking about the history of that house that he's been working on, and then you have this tour guide that's telling all these people misinformation about the origin of it, and it just shows you how over time, you know what I mean, when that history isn't preserved, how sometimes the facts and the details about our own history, particularly people of disenfranchised people, you know, how that gets contorted and then repurposed, you know, and someone else takes credit for it. And so I thought this was obviously like a cautionary tale about the effects of that, but then also you know, a really powerful story about pride and relationships and the kind of I think you mentioned in your review, like some of the lies that get told.
It's interesting because I think this movie works on so many different levels. Yeah, high level. I feel like the surface level reading is the gentrification piece. Like you're looking at this as a macro level. Wow, these people are just being, what existence they have is being just slowly drained from them because of this thing that's happening in San Francisco. But on the personal level, I think there's some really interesting ideas about how those small, subtle lies we tell ourselves over and over again, you kind of forget their lies, and how those lies impact the relationships we share with other people, the people who are closest to us. So I think it works on a lot of levels. It works on a micro scale and as a great character piece, but also I think the themes on a bigger picture.
The themes are what are vast about it. It is pretty much a small scale film in terms of, I mean, obviously it's stylistically, it's very polished and slick, but it's pretty, you know, self-contained in this one little space. But it's a beautiful ode to the beauty of San Francisco in general, particularly during that time. You know, so I think it's definitely something that people should absorb and see, and I think they'll get some you know, a nice history lesson as well. You know, about some of the origins of things there, but.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And this is from writer-director Joe Talbot, and it stars Jimmy Fails and Jonathan Majors. Again, I love how you call it a visual poem because it really does feel like that. It has all the emotional energy that you would get from reading a poem. The way you feel San Francisco feels like such a real lived-in character. All of this feels like a really a poem on a grand scale. And again, I seconded. If you can find this film playing on any screen in your city, check it out. Probably won't be there very long. And I hope by the grace of the Academy that it makes a resurgence come the end of the year for award season, because I would say this movie easily top 10, probably top 5 movies of the year, hands down so far.
Especially right now.
And I think it deserves that sort of attention.
Sure. I think closing note on that, just basically the 3 highlights I would say: cinematography is gorgeous. It's just so pretty to look at, for one thing. And then, as you mentioned, the 2 performers, both terrific, very layered. And then the score was something that stood out to me too. That's something that I would like to revisit too later on. I want to see how it lines up, obviously, once Oscar season comes. But as of right now, that was my favorite score that I've heard so far this year. So
definitely, I think those 3 categories are the major. I'd even throw a director out there too. I would throw that out there. I think it's a really strong. Vision.
I don't know if it's a debut or not, but it has a very strong visual command. He knows what he wants to say and how he wants to say it.
So the next film I want to hit on is one that definitely got more traction with the film internet, and that is Midsommar.
Yeah.
And we actually caught this one together.
Yes, we did.
Because you're an amazing friend and showed up to my birthday party. Because yes, at my birthday, I invited my friends to go watch Midsommar.
Yeah, because he's a sadist.
Yeah, we caught this film. Ari Aster, his second film following last year's Hereditary. This is kind of delving into his obsession with cults. You could call it the most horrifying breakup movie of the year or of the decade.
Yeah, for sure.
Laron, did you think this was as strong as Hereditary?
Here's the thing. A lot of people complained, the people who didn't care for it, and it's been a polarizing film for sure. But so was, I guess, Hereditary was, oddly enough, but I felt like here, the story, the narrative is definitely, it's more narratively obtuse than Hereditary. But I felt there was a lot more to draw from in the abstraction here. Just there's a lot in that void that what appears to be a void, because it's not as easy to pin down as Hereditary was. I think Hereditary easily is more effective as a horror film, like as a genuinely like a fright fest. This one is more cerebral, and I think that. But I found myself thinking about it a lot more often than I did Hereditary. I still think Hereditary edges out in terms of just collectively as a whole, just more enjoyable to me. But I think Midsommar is something that I would love to revisit several times, because there's so much being thrown at you at once and a lot to take in, from all fronts, filmmaking. So.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. I think of the two, I prefer Hereditary, but there's a few reasons for that. One, I as hard as Hereditary was to watch, I think it's a more digestible film.
Yeah,
like Hereditary is a grossly uncomfortable movie. Sure. This is a movie that was so uncomfortable. I'm like, yes, I'm going to revisit this because it's just that well done. But also, I'm like, God,
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's quite a lot.
It's a lot. It's
lengthier too. It's quite a long film. I think it's
is
2 hours and 30-40 minutes or so.
Yeah, it does feel that, and like not feels that in a.
It's dense. It's just
it doesn't feel long and like I'm ready to get out of here. It feels long and oh my God, because you're so uncomfortable. You're living in this very uncomfortable place for a very long time.
Very long time.
But no, I mean his set design in Midsommar is incredible. The cinematography again.
Every frame of this film could be just a crisp, postcard of everything is captured very well. It's his attention to the smallest things, throughout the story it's just, again, a rich and vibrant looking film for sure.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of draws you in. It's very dreamlike in that way. And
you kind of perpetually feel like it's in a nightmare, really.
It's surrealistic. It's a surrealistic film for sure. And there's enough familiar elements to it to kind of, ground you. And at least I give you a breadcrumb of it's not, but it just feels like it starts weird and then it gets weirder. And then you can't imagine it being weirder, and then it somehow just keeps doing that.
I think really this is just the prequel to The Good Place. We didn't know about Cheaties down here being a sociology major and whatnot.
Right. I've heard him describe it as an adult fairy tale, and obviously you mentioned it has fantastical elements to it, somewhat. Mainly drug-induced ones.
It's all drug-induced.
Drug-induced ones for sure. But living in that headspace long enough, then that's kind of what it could feel like. You leave feeling like you are high.
Yes,
and like literally, like not just saying that. Figuratively speaking, you literally feel somewhat disoriented leaving the theater.
It does feel dreamlike, and that's the thing. He does such a good job at immersing you in that story and that world that he's created. That walking out of, you're kind of in this dreamy daze sort of state. Yeah. So it's drugs the movie. Like you watch it and you feel like taking drugs,
and it's very disturbing. It has a very disturbing undercurrent to it throughout, even when there's not violent things happening. Just the uncomfortableness you feel watching it, but never in a way where you're like, I want to run and get out of this theater. But you're so kind of perversely fascinated with how it just keeps it's like you're being hypnitized.
Yes.
Like you're you're trying to understand what you're seeing, and it gets weird.
Like, what does it mean?
What does it mean, and how is it all, and
it also lays down some trope that there are things it does that make it seem like it's going to be very tropey.
Sure.
And it's not tropey.
It doesn't go that way, no. It derails all of that. And I think also, he mentioned also that it was kind of a metaphor for catharsis, particularly dealing with grief, and then also a breakup of sorts, like you mentioned. And I feel like reading it in that context, because some people thought the story, they're like, it just goes nowhere, or there's. I was like, no, I feel like
No, it goes all sorts of places.
I think the story is simple.
Yes,
I just think, but the story it's told in such an elaborate way. There's so many different.
These are character stories.
Sure.
The plot on a whole is not that complicated. That is not what this movie's about.
That's what I was
Yeah,
saying.
a bunch of basically a bunch of college kids go to a Swedish festival. That's the story.
That's the story.
That's it.
That's the story. But so much happens
and crazy
there
things happen.
that provides richness to the story. So
I mean, you could say the same thing about a haunted house movie. A bunch of people walk into a haunted house and they can't get out. That, you know what I mean?
There
Like
you go.
it's like that. There's more to it than that, obviously. Yeah, so highly recommend it. I will probably wait until this hits home video to check it out again.
Yeah.
I need some time.
yeah,
you know,
compelling performances. The lead actress,
incredible.
I don't know. I think it's Florence Pugh, something like that. Something she did an indie film recently that she was praised for called Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, I think it was called, and she was compelling in that. And here, I think she's someone that we're going to see, a lot more from.
I think so too.
She's
great.
She was great in this.
Well, and like I said, I love seeing William Jackson Harper in there. Chidi from the Good Place is fun. We get Will Poulter, who, if anyone watched Bandersnatch, the Black Mirror interactive movie, he was kind of a featured character in that.
I think
Jack Rayner.
I think you called it our answer to the modern day Wicker Man of what. So
Yes,
it has that sensibility.
I feel like it's I really do feel like it is the modern day Wicker Man, because it's kind of exploring that same sort of culture Wicker Man is trying to do, but in a very, very different way in the 21st century.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of differences, and I'm not talking about the Nicolas Cage Wicker Man. I'm talking about the original.
No one's talking about that.
No one. I think it was what the 60s or 70s. Christopher Lee was in it. Like and that movie's fine. I don't love that movie. Of the three, I like this one the best probably. But that movie is definitely doing some interesting things and trying to explore similar aspects of that culture. I'd say it's modern day Wicker Man. I think maybe we understand what the Wicker Man was supposed to trying to do back when it came out.
Yeah. I mean, well, I would like to think so. I think final point I want to really make about this film is basically that it feels like the most disturbing thing about it is how nuanced and how nonchalant.
Everything's nonchalant.
And that's the thing that makes it more disturbing.
The way
something horrific can happen, and everyone's calmness
when acts like it's normal.
Whether it's a murder, whether it's no matter what's happening.
I feel like it does a great thing, and I'm trying not to spoil things, but it does this thing where it lures you into understanding
how you could be lured into a cult.
Yes.
And feel like, no, this is fine, guys. Look, what's happening is not a big deal.
No, this is normal. This is how it always goes.
You're being...
Oh, I can't spoil it, but there's a certain character that, like, all this crazy stuff happens, and every time someone asks, like, no, this is just...
This is normal. This is all part of the process.
Well, and I guess we should also frame it that, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the characters... The college students who go are all sociology majors and want to get their thesis papers off of this trip.
Oh yeah, I never made that connection. Yeah, that's definitely
so like it's a combination of people being just kind of accepting that this is a normal ritual that you're participating in.
Kind of the Stanford experiment, like that.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, where you're like, what if you're enclosed in this space? Like, what is in human nature? How do you react in certain situations? You're trapped here in this space. People are doing these things. Everyone else seems to be fine with it. You don't want to be the person that's freaking out about everything. But what's happening is very abnormal.
Right.
So.
It's that combo with the fact that some of the students, some of these people who go and are experiencing this, are morbidly curious because they want to work it into this research paper for their degree, right? So it's like a combo of like some of these characters, they're just like, I don't want to be the one to rock the boat because I'm not part of this. I'm just here for the ride. And I'm also drugged up.
And there's a level of like not wanting to offend. Like, what if we say this? Like, we might offend the culture. We may not offend. Like, just maybe this is just something we don't understand and this is normal. But something in their gut is saying...
There's a moment really early in the film when it goes from like, oh, this is kind of weird to... Oh, these people are crazy.
Sure.
But everyone's like, no, this is...
So why are we still here?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, this is part of the ritual. This is how it goes. Yeah. And then that's when you're like, okay. And everything after that, it's already kind of dreamy because the characters are drugged up when they get to that point that I'm talking about. But everything after that, you're just like,
Yeah.
waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah, waiting for the next thing to happen.
It's nuts.
It is something you will not forget, whether
No.
you love it or hate it. It is something you will talk about, and I've always, championed and praised films that do that. Because if I can feel something leaving it, then that filmmaker did their job.
Absolutely. And if I can say I've never seen a film like that, and I feel like it was effective in what it was trying to do, whether or not you like that, I think it did it pretty well.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Hey,
But enter it with caution, but
Yes.
knowing that you're in for something that's not going to make you feel particularly good.
Nope. The last film I'm just going to mention, and it's not good, but I just want to mention it because I was somewhat excited. Weirdly, was Stuber, because it's starring Dave Bautista and Kamal Nanjiani. I love those guys. Sure. I felt like they made a funny duo. The premise was silly, but it kind of felt like, like a studio comedy featuring a couple people I like. But sometimes the studio comedies can be great. We get stuff like, kind of like a Will Ferrell movie from the early aughts, something kind of like that.
He had a handful of good ones, yeah.
Yeah. They're hit or miss.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, for every hit, you had probably 2 misses or a miss and a half, maybe even.
Sure.
This was not great, but I just want to mention it because I have some friends who are excited about it. There are people asking if who've asked me, should I see it? And I'm, I expected, here's the thing. Those two are great. I still maintain those two are great and could easily make a great buddy cop or buddy movie. The movie just was not up to par. Like the script was just not up to par. It wasn't great.
Well, I didn't get a chance to catch it. I won't be running to see it, but I will say, for a general audience, say your average, everyday moviegoer, are they going to walk away with this entertained enough?
I don't think.
Do you think even on that level, it's probably a skip it?
I feel like it's probably a skip it. And I hate to say that because I want those guys to do good stuff. I want them to do more stuff together, even because I like them, and I feel like they do have some chemistry. Kumal especially is really, really great.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the script played as well as it could have to Bautista's strengths, but here's the thing. I went into that with like almost no expectations except to really like those actors being funny together. And I saw it with my girlfriend. We just were like, hey, it's been a crazy Friday. Let's watch something that's kind of like mindless. You don't...
Sure.
Yeah. It's a drive-through.
Right.
But this wasn't even a good Big Mac. This was like a...
It was cold.
It was cold. Like they didn't put enough Mac sauce on there, or they Taco Bell and they don't give you...
Yeah, they left the sauce. You don't have no sauce.
Yeah. There's no secret sauce there. There's none of that creamy jalapeno stuff.
There it is.
McDonald's, Taco Bell, we are taking sponsors right at this time. But I think it's skip it. And it's a bummer because I walked away feeling like, and I wasn't even trying to be that critical of it. I just wanted to have a good time.
And even on that level, it kind of...
I just feel like it should have been funnier. Because even the premise could have been better. It just it felt like the writers didn't know what they had and the actors weren't... The script didn't write to those performers' strengths as much as it could have. Like I said, I think Kumal, probably more than anybody, carried the movie.
Yeah.
He has some really good bits, but it's definitely not enough to justify the ticket price or the time. I saw it with the AMC A-list, and I still
felt cheated.
I was like, I could have spent that hour and a half doing something better.
Yeah.
Watching
Toy Story 4 again or something.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, I think that's about all I got. I guess we could mention Spider-Man. Did you see Spider-Man, by the way?
I missed Spider-Man.
You missed Spider-Man?
I missed it.
Should I talk
I remember
about
you said it was your least favorite of the 3. Not necessarily saying it was bad, but that Jake Gyllenhaal, who I won't speak illy of, but I've worked with him and have different opinions about him. But
Laron, you're saying that like he's got a gun pointed to your head right now.
He's right in here, guys. He might. You never know. I might collaborate with him one day, and he might hear this podcast, and I will be like, "Oh yeah, that one guy."
I'm like, "Oh yeah, I heard you on that Quentin Tarantino Once Upon a Time in Hollywood review like 5 years ago."
Sure. Oh yeah, I remember that. He's holding it against me. No. I hear he was the highlight of it to some.
He was easily the highlight of it.
Okay.
I don't want to go too into it. We talk about superhero movies a lot. Of the last 3 Spider-Man movies, so that is Far From Home, Into the Spider-Verse, and Homecoming. It's definitely, I think, the weakest. It doesn't make it bad, though. Because I like those other movies quite a lot. In fact, Spider-Verse was one of my favorite movies last year.
Sure.
Listeners are probably aware. I think that movie transcends anything in the MCU.
Sure.
Honestly. So...
and it's on Netflix right now, guys, so check it out.
Check it out. And if you have a 4K TV, I got to say, it looks really sick in 4K. But, Spider-Verse, check it out.
Shameless plug.
This one, it takes about a third of the movie for me to really get going.
Sure.
I like some of the teen drama they're trying to drum up, but I just had it took me a long time to get a sense of what is going on in the movie. There's a reason for that. People who are listening have probably seen it and they know what that is, but like there's a clear moment for me when I was like, oh, I'm here. I'm tracking.
On board, yeah.
We're having a great time now. I wasn't having a bad time before, but I was just kind of confused about like, okay, what am I supposed to follow here? Like we're following all these different things. Oh, here's what we're following, and it's great. But yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal
hammed it up.
Hey man, all I'm saying is if I could get him in more hammy performances like this, I'd be down for it.
There you go.
Like it's not quite like Oakjaw hamming it up, but like he's getting pretty close, but like in a super villain sort of, bro. He's not twirling his mustache. He's just got charisma, but you believe his motivations. Anyway, he's great. He elevates the movie, and also, as a kid who grew up watching that 90s Spider-Man cartoon, they used Mysterio, which is a great character from that show that I enjoyed that I never thought in a million years would actually make it to the big screen.
Yeah.
And also, there's a great mid-credits cameo that made me like actually jump. I felt like fan service, but in a way that I wanted. So I felt good about it.
There you go. It was worth the ride. Though.
Yeah, worth the ride.
So unlike Stuber.
Unlike Stuber, yeah.
This one you should actually catch.
Spider-Man, go and see it. I mean...
Not high expectations, but yeah.
I mean, it's another MCU film.
Sure.
And you're going to be satisfied.
Yeah.
And there will be certain things about it that you'll really like. There'll be certain parts of it, maybe not so much. But I will say, though, the question I'm going to pose out here, will the MCU ever get out of the shadow of Tony Stark? That is a question I want to throw out there and just ponder. Because Spider-Man has had 2 MCU movies, and they're both... He looms largely over both of them, even after he's, spoiler alert for the biggest movie of all time, dead. He still is a very big presence in the movie without actually having to appear in the movie per se.
Sure.
So, all right, so that'll do it for what we've been watching, guys. A lot of good stuff coming out, and we're going to get to our review of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But Laron, we don't talk about movie news on here a lot. I generally don't necessarily think it's super productive, and it dates the conversation. But I did want to mention this one because I think that this is actually really exciting for us.
Yeah.
We are a podcast based in Oklahoma.
Sure.
So we don't get you've worked on many a film set.
Yeah.
May or may not have worked with Jake Gyllenhaal at one point, and
may or may not have enjoyed it.
Yeah, and that might have happened. And you've worked on August Osage County in the past, so you've worked on some pretty high profile films. You've worked on some smaller films here in Oklahoma. So we do have a film industry here. It's small but building and getting stronger. More productions are coming here. Cool tax incentives. XYZ. Not trying to make this commercial, but I'm saying we do have things that happen here occasionally. It's always really exciting when this happens. And I wanted to bring this up because this movie's not coming out for a while. So it was just announced that Martin Scorsese's next film, no, not The Irishman, his next film, he is collaborating again with Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro in a film called Killers of the Flower Moon, which is an adaptation of a novel that takes place in Oklahoma.
In Osage County.
And Osage County. Man, what is it about Osage County,
man? There is a rich history in Osage County. So much work actually is done there, which is surprising, even television. So, yeah, it's interesting.
So the synopsis for this, as written by IndieWire, reads, the 1920s set drama is based on David Grant's historical book and centers around the Osage Nation murders, in which members of the Native American tribe were killed after a group became rich after discovering oil at their reservation, and then the murders attracted the attention of the newly created FBI.
There you go.
So
I have not caught the book. I have heard fantastic things about that book, and we sell it at my day job at the airport, and it sells very, very well. So I think I was really excited when hearing this news because Martin Scorsese, obviously, mastermind, genius.
He's only got so many movies left in him too,
right? So to be here in my own, 2 hours away from
our backyard, basically,
essentially, making a high budget production with some A-list stars is huge because it could be an Oscar contender. It could be great for our state in general, but also bringing it into the heart. I knew that if he wanted it to be authentic, and most of his films, almost all of his films are, that he would want to shoot it on location in Osage County. So the fact that they finally announced that he did in fact land here and not going to repurpose it and make it in some other state is really exciting for us and for the film community at large, but then particularly for our state.
Yeah, no, and this is a big win, and yeah, I appreciate that you highlighted that about Scorsese because he does strive for authenticity in the setting, but that doesn't always happen. Usually whenever there are high-profile projects set in Oklahoma, they're very rarely filmed here. I think of a really big one, Logan, from a couple of years back. Notoriously, they stop in Oklahoma City, and it looks nothing like Oklahoma City in any capacity other than there's a casino in Oklahoma City downtown. Anyway, and then also we have upcoming. There's the Watchmen HBO series set. At least a big chunk of the story is set in Tulsa, but they did not film in Tulsa. So yeah, it doesn't always happen.
No,
where they set their movie and their story in a place that they actually film there. So I think it's really exciting to have. I mean, this is probably the biggest cast since Wildlife or even August Osage County.
August, yeah, for sure. And I think shooting it on location is so important. I think probably for not just for authenticity, but also just for out of respect for that true life story. You know what I mean? Like, this happened here on this turf. Why not shoot it there? And also because it's so wide open here, Oklahoma is an easy state to film in. So as far as getting licensing and what have you. So it's going to be great. Hopefully,
fingers crossed.
I can get on that film.
Oh, I was gonna say we could go. I could take some vacation time and we could rent a tent over in.
There it is. That's all I just want to see them work.
Yeah, just watch from a distance through binoculars. Yeah. No. Fingers crossed. I hear they're looking for people to work on that film, Laron.
Hey.
I hear there's a podcast who wants to interview people who are working on that film too.
I'm hireable.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that will do it for our latest talk on the breaking news. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our spoiler-free review discussion of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I'm Rick Dalton. It's my pleasure, Mr. Schwartz.
Call me Marvin. Put it there. That's your son?
No, it's my stunt double, Cliff Booth.
Last night we watched a Rick Dalton double feature. All the shooting. I love that stuff, the killing.
A lot of killing.
Anybody order fried sauerkraut? Can you Nazi bastard?
That was from the trailer of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that stars Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, Margot Robbie, Al Pacino, and many, many, many others.
Sure.
Literally anybody in the movie actually is somebody.
Yeah.
And if
you're in a Tarantino movie, you might be somebody.
You're probably somebody, including Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's daughter.
Yes. Yeah. God. Emil Hirsch.
Yes.
Timothy Oliphant. It's just so many random people but that's always how Tarantino's films are.
Scene to scene.
Say, oh, hey, that guy, he hasn't done anything in a long time. Here he is again. It's always like a playbook of
Well, I just figure it's one of those things I don't know, but I'm sure it's one of those things everyone wants to be in a Tarantino. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it's even more than an MCU movie because there's so few of them. It's like I really want to be in a Tarantino film. So he can cast anybody for any role, right?
Sure.
Sure.
He doesn't make movies with the same, frequency as others. So once, like you said, we mentioned earlier, it's an event film. So if you're in a Tarantino movie, like, hey, you don't know when his next one's going to be or if he's going to quit because he says he's going to be done after 10 films. I doubt it, but he might. He says so.
Allegedly 10, and apparently everyone wants the 10th one to be a Star Trek movie. But
there it is.
I wouldn't. I want a Tarantino Star Trek movie, but I don't want.
If he did it, I'm here for it.
I'm here for it, but I don't want that to be his 10th film.
No, not the one you go out on.
No. I want that to be a weird. Anyway, side conversation. Anyway, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
The synopsis, according to IMDb, reads: A faded television actor and his stunt double strive to achieve fame and success in the film industry during the final years of Hollywood's golden age in 1969, Los Angeles. So I think that about sums it up.
Sure.
This is a very slice of life movie. Okay.
Yeah.
You are dropped into a couple of key days in the lives of these people.
Yeah.
There's not really much of a plot to speak of per se. It's just you're following these people around.
It's a meditation of that period in film history where, you did have all these stars who were just the highlight pinnacle of that period. realizing that a huge change culturally was going to be happening soon, and you could feel it, and I feel like you can even see this in watching the films from the 60s on into the 70s. There was a dramatic shift in tone, shift in context. A lot of things were happening historically that were different, and so it's kind of like a loving ode to that period, that they wanted so desperately to kind of hang on to.
The way I kind of look at this film, and it is, we're in a really weird, and I don't know if this is intentional or how this works, but we've been in this nostalgia culture for 5 or 6 years now, at least. I mean, there's always been nostalgia culture,
Sure.
but I mean, it has taken such a prominence in the mainstream. I would say the last 10 years, even.
I think it's because of how quickly culture is changing, particularly with social media and what have you. I feel like we're seeing it literally rapidly, even just year to year, how differently people communicate or don't. So
we're latching on to the simplicity
of life, the way it used to be, less busy or inundated with content.
Yes.
Really content, because we spent more
everywhere.
time. We spent more time with people. We spent more time doing practical things, and now we spend so much time zoned out.
Yeah.
So anyway,
but I see this as kind of Tarantino doing his own riff on his nostalgia.
Yeah.
Everyone's watching the freaking Lion King, and he's like, Lion King's no, what's that? No, he's thinking back to the 60s in the LA that he fondly remembers as a child.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting juxtaposition there. Yeah, because we as products of the 90s, we have these live action films coming out as a part of our own nostalgia, but the films he grew up watching, the things he loved, and he's obviously not necessarily old enough to grow up during that period, but grew up watching films from that era.
But I mean, in some interviews I've seen him talk about, he's like, we recreated Hollywood exactly how I remembered it.
Exactly how he remembered it.
What's interesting, it's how he remembered it,
not
exactly how it was.
Yeah.
And that's how for me, that, that really puts into perspective the entire tone and approach to the story in this film, because this is a sweet film. And I know it's crazy to say it's a sweet film that features the Manson murders, a street fight, shootings. There's Tarantino violence is in this movie.
Sure.
But it's generally speaking, it's an uplifting, sweet reminiscing about this thing that was so great.
It's the most sentimental film he's made.
I agree.
Of all, is it 10 films now? I don't know.
Well, if you count Kill Bill, it's 10.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's 9. If you count Kill Bill as 2 movies, it's 10. 1 movie, it's 9.
Okay.
He swears up and down it's 1 movie.
He always has a lot of love and passion for his characters, but here, the story itself radiates a kind of warmth that's not normally there, because there's normally a cold, callous darkness to cynicism.
Cynicism is very present. And I have to say, coming off The Hateful Eight, which might be my least favorite Tarantino, or it's bottom down there. And and here's the thing, I actually think it's one of his better produced, just filmmaking. I think it's one of his better films by a lot. But I gotta say, and I don't know if it's where I was at in my life when I saw that movie was so cynical and nihilistic. I was like, I just don't think I want to watch that again. The world's awful. Everyone's lying.
Yeah.
Let's just go ahead and kill each other and laugh it off while we can.
I differ. I differ from you with that, but I have heard that sentiment quite often with people who didn't care for it. That it's one of those films of his that definitely leaves you feeling cold afterwards, as opposed to invigorated, like most of his movies do.
Right. And again, I don't want to say that it's a bad movie, because it's not. It's very again, I think from a craftsman, as a craft, it is.
Sure.
It is top notch, and I love how it feels like a stage play. There's actually a lot I love about that movie, but walking away at the end of the day, the idea that I feel like he was trying to get across was just so sad and hopeless. So coming off of that, I seriously had a moment, and I as you process movies you really don't like, and I'm going to come around to that at some point. I had a moment where I was like, do I even like Tarantino at all? Did I really like?
Did you ever like him?
Maybe I just misunderstood. Because I mean, even Inglourious Basterds, all of his movies are kind of cynical, but they have a certain way of getting you energized. And in this film, was like the antithesis
of that.
The more I thought about The Hateful Eight, the more I got mad about it. The more I think about this movie, the happier I get. The more I'm like, I can't wait to see that again. It's a great film. I love the characters. I love hanging out with them. They're also well written. They
always are. But just in particular, and also it's fun to see. I mean, he always has big name actors in it, but untraditional ones this time. You know, Leo and Brad Pitt were kind of Hollywood heartthrobs for quite a while.
They've never been in a movie together,
which is insane.
That is insane.
And then to make it be in a Tarantino film is, obviously cherry on top of all of it. But I feel like the two of them played very well. After great chemistry between the two of them, very fun performances. I think Brad Pitt in particular was my favorite.
Brad Pitt's my favorite as well. Yeah,
I just think there was a charm to this one. And I think it's because it was done lovingly. It's like you can tell he really genuinely loved this period in film history, and he wanted to pay tribute to it. Because it seems like filmmaking is going further and further away from any kind of sentiment or any semblance of what that era was like.
It's getting forgotten, right?
Yeah, it's being forgotten. It's kind of like it's like newspapers are just dwindling away. Like print journalism, in general, like that kind of. That having something tangible to hold. Everything's digital now. Everything's kind of, you know what I mean? There's no I don't know, gravitas to it. So I feel like here we have this movie that now, for anyone growing up in that era, I think a local actor here made a tribute to it and said that he said, I have never seen a film that captured that period in my life better. And I thought, and obviously I'm too young to have lived through it, but that speaks to also to the authenticity of it.
This is probably the first Tarantino film, legit, and I know you people don't know my dad, but my dad loves that golden era stuff. He loved Gunsmoke. He loved all the Western stuff.
Yeah,
this is probably the first Tarantino movie I would actually legit take my dad to see how he reacted. I would never take him to see any of the other ones for all sorts of reasons, but this one, it's like homaging a period of time that my dad probably grew up remembering. I mean, he didn't live in Hollywood, but he did remember the television shows and the way stories were told. I mean, literally the opening kind of vignette, I was like, God, this is like, this is a type of television and storytelling that is so from the past that will never happen again.
That classical way of performing, where because I think there was an escapism to filmmaking at that point. It was about compelling story and what have you, but there was somewhat of a fantasy to it because everything was done with a certain polish. And it did obviously usher in the formula film, but I think now there's such a staggering, drive to make things real. The realism of things, like everything's so raw to the point of we're forgetting we're watching movies anymore. We've gotten so close to almost getting to total film where it's just observing things.
Right.
That the craftsmanship of telling a well told is dying. You have Clint Eastwood is one of the last ones still making films in that vein.
I don't know how he does it either. He is, boy,
still manages to do it.
Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. I think I love this movie. I think I love the movie. And I liked it a lot. And the more I thought about it, the more it's really stuck with me. And some of the jokes, the characters, I just think this is one of Tarantino's best movies, and I like it because it doesn't have that cynicism.
Yeah.
I appreciate that cynicism sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's one of his traits that, in a lot of ways, has elevated the art form of film. The way he does that, the way he communicates things, the way he satirizes violence. I think these are all very big contributions that I think Tarantino has made. But I do appreciate that as he kind of is allegedly getting towards the end of his career, he
hasn't lost hope.
He hasn't lost hope. Yeah,
his love for film is still
alive,
present.
Yeah,
present in the film. And what I've always found impressive and fascinating about Tarantino as a filmmaker is his kind of meticulous attention to detail. Every sign. Every poster, every vintage car, hairstyle, musical cue.
He's allegedly written 3 or so episodes of this television show, like at full episodes that he's intending to pitch.
Oh, Jesus.
Of the Leonardo DiCaprio show.
Yeah.
Starring Rick Dalton, one of the shows he's on.
Yeah.
He actually, in an interview, says, yeah, I've got like 3 or 4 episodes. I might pitch it to Netflix or something. He's like, I don't think Leo will do it. I mean, I hope he does it, but he probably won't, in a very Tarantino-y way. But
right.
That's how he has thought so deeply about these characters.
Sure.
That he has written like total fantasy shows that don't exist.
Yeah.
And not for no reason other than to like give his characters in this movie extra depth and backstory. That's nuts.
That's nuts. It's very nuts. And also I feel like all of those elements kind of culminate, to really add a real richness, and flavor to the setting and that period. And the sentiment of that period, just kind of how people communicated and what, that we hadn't gotten into a period of despair as a country or what have you up to this point. There was still this heightened horizon.
Well, here's why I think it's interesting. This is about the time stuff started turning over, because I know 1968 was supposed to be kind of like the year stuff. That's when
the year
MLK got assassinated.
Fair.
Yeah.
That guy.
Yeah. So 68 was, but here's the thing though. This takes place largely in 1969. But I guess I see what you're saying though, because again, I think it's important to note that this is how Tarantino remembers it. It does feel like it feels like a really romanticized memory.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I like about this movie is it's kind of him both reminiscing and also kind of what's the word?
It's like he's reflecting on
what could have been.
What could have been, exactly. And I also feel like the one thing that stands out to me in it that at first bothered me, but now in context, makes sense, is kind of this staggering devoid of people of color. And I thought to myself, this. I mean, when obviously there's no Sam Jackson this time, so spoiler. But I feel like it's indicative of the time, though. And that's that. Again, this is how he remembered it. And in that particular time, we didn't have big mainstream actors, at least not in the forefront, that were stars.
That was back when blaxploitation was probably
exactly
it was
it was its own separate entity. And so what you had were these like you had your Rick Dalton-esque type of characters. And I feel like even though it lacked that, because normally his films have some minority character that is prominently there.
I mean, we got Jet Li for one scene.
Sure.
Or well, I should say a very lengthy scene, but
sure, yeah.
one scene.
Sure, one scene. But it makes sense. It adds. And also again, it's a reflective look back at that period too, and see, and maybe for all intents and purposes, all the best parts of that era and the worst parts of it, but an honest one, So
right, and then did I say Jet Li? I meant Bruce Lee. If I said Jet
Bruce
Lee,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
definitely Bruce Lee, not Jet Li. Jet Li
definitely was not around yet.
He not yet. No, I think you're onto something, and I and you tell me what you think. I mean, obviously, race in America is a very important topic, but he's coming off of having made The Hateful Eight, and Django Unchained. This is a movie that's not about that.
Sure.
I mean, like, what do you think? Do you think it's necessary for this movie to touch on those things, or do you think he touches on it by not saying a lot? I
think there's something to be said about it not being in there at all. I think that, and maybe if we go back and look at those films, it would also say there was a devoid of people of color during that period. We can have a conversation about that, just looking at the actual films from that period. So, I don't think necessarily it was important for him to just, in that revisionist way, create a character and then just make them the star that they wouldn't have been back then. Because that's not why he's making this film, unlike Inglourious Bastards, where he was trying to rewrite the history and not in getting too far into, we'll do it in spoilers. There's an element of that here, but not in regards to race, So I don't know. I think, I don't think every conversation has to call back to it. I do say, though, that our entire country is founded on. You're never going to escape the conversation of race because this nation was built on it. So that it's in there, whether it was modified or hidden.
It's there when it's not there.
It's there when it's not there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's. I'm really glad you made that observation. That's something I hadn't considered.
Yeah.
Because I guess I don't have to.
Yeah.
White privilege is a bitch. Okay, but I'm glad you mentioned that though, because it is something that is of the time. There were not a lot of people of color on the screen making movies.
Stars for sure. Like there might have been. Actors.
Oh yeah. Actually, I should say
supporting
stars.
roles, but stars like Rick Dalton,
specifically
not
stars.
in that period, yeah.
Laron, I don't know what else to say about this movie without spoiling it. I think the soundtrack's great.
Oh God, yeah.
Basically, any of the songs and any of the trailers find their way into the movie somewhere.
The period music is fantastic.
It's so great, and it just makes you feel like you're there.
It's a weird vibe. I never wanted this film to end. It's 2 hours and 40 minutes, but it brisks by, and because you just take in everything. And I will say, most of his films are, like particularly The Hateful Eight, but are a slow build. But and even more so here. But I don't feel like any of the meandering in this film is not without reason or purpose. Because everything.
Because here's the thing. Like I feel like you just kind of get early on that this is not a particularly plot-driven thing. You're just like on a ride with these guys.
You're basking in that period. It's
right.
kind of just it's as much of a character study as it is a setting, story, period, piece of sort. Just to to again absorb that period in time and see what it was like. But and I appreciate that because having obviously not grown up in the 60s, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it very much as a person of color. But I think, but at least from the context of the films that I watched as a film, enthusiast and in film school, it very much captures the spirit of those films that I watched growing up, with my grandmother or what have you. And so it is sweet in that way, that he's able to extract that because that's so hard to do well. Yeah,
because again, he touches on things like the Manson murders, but I will also say something I've tried to kind of help set expectations, just telling people all of the history that's present is a backdrop. It is not.
Yeah.
Like they might encounter things that you know about from history, but it's not.
It's not the story.
It's not really
It's not about that.
It's not about that at all. Like it just kind of these characters' journeys, they intersect with that moment, and it just keeps going on,
Exactly.
And so that's why I feel like it's so easy to say, yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff in this movie. There are flamethrowers, there's all sorts of crazy stuff, but it's sweet. It feels good. It's again just like it's like cracking open a beer in the summer with your friend on the back patio, your friend from high school or something, and just chit. You haven't talked to him in like 20 years, and you're just sitting
reminiscing.
That's what it is. That's what the whole movie feels like. And I, like you, like the times we usually spend reminiscing with our own friends from high school or whatever.
Sure,
you never want it to end, and I just feel like it captures that so well.
No matter where you are, where you come from, you always look back on your past, whether it's hard. What was a hard past or different? And there's something you can always, because something brought you to where you are, and there's always little moments.
There's always good things.
There's always good things to look at. So
there's overwhelmingly terrible things, but you don't remember the terrible things.
Or you try not to.
Yeah. But so before we give our verdict and then move into our spoiler conversation, I do have to ask. I saw you ranking your Tarantino films.
I did.
On Facebook today. So I have not ranked them, but I do want to kind of talk through your list a little bit, and I'll throw my 2 cents out there. Sure. Mostly because there's one film in particular that is Jackie Brown that I really want to revisit before I do a proper ranking because I haven't seen it in a very long time, and I feel like I would like it much more today than when I watched it the first time. So let's you want to start from let's go to the bottom. Start from the bottom.
The bottom, number 10. The bottom of the list. And I it's interesting. I always kind of say, like, because Tarantino is one of those filmmakers that is so distinct, that you have somebody, you rank it, and then all of a sudden it's going to be a conversation starter. Because no, that needs to be way higher on your list or way lower on your list, depending on what it is. But I think he's one of those filmmakers, again, as a consumer of art, he kind of, in watching these films and watching people rank them for themselves, it says a lot, about what things they're most drawn to or respond to, in terms of tone, in terms of style, in terms of, as an artist. So, or storytelling. But I feel like my least favorite film of Tarantino's is Reservoir Dogs.
Reservoir Dogs.
And I love, and the thing is, I will say, all of these films are 3.5, 4-star films. So, I mean, if I'm ranking on a 4-star scale here, so none of these films are beneath 3.5 stars. So I love all of them.
Gotcha.
But I think that Reservoir Dogs is the one I may obviously be due for revisiting because I've probably seen it twice. But it's the one that just doesn't resonate with me the most. And maybe because it's less flamboyant, less showy. It's definitely, he's always been a talky, filmmaker, heavy on dialogue and character development. But there's something about that one in particular that just doesn't feel, it doesn't leave an emotional impact on me, whether that's just a visceral feeling leaving it, like, that I do with his other films. But so I put that there towards the bottom. But.
So my number 10 that I'm making up sort of on the fly. I don't have it written down like you do, but I do have it up here with the caveat that I really want to rewatch Jackie Brown.
Okay.
Just one caveat. So that if it falls low on my list, no, it's not because I don't like it. It's because I don't remember it as fondly as others, but it's only because I didn't really...
Sure.
I don't think I fully appreciated that movie when I watched it. I truthfully don't think I did. So
I
saw it way too soon, right after seeing Pulp Fiction when I was in high school.
Sure.
The only time I saw it.
Yeah.
But I feel like I would like it way more now.
It's the one I've revisited and has since made its way to the top 3 on the list. So I think it's definitely one that I feel like is highly underrated. It's also his least seen and least referenced one.
Yes.
So but I think also too because it in some ways tonally it is different than
way
some of his other
more
films.
reserved.
Way more reserved in there. It's a different Tarantino. It's a different brand of Tarantino.
Definitely.
But I think having a more refined palette now, you would watch it and appreciate things in it that you may have didn't then.
Exactly.
So it might have just been our time when it came out because I didn't enjoy it until maybe the last 5 years. So but yeah, definitely worth revisiting.
So caveat asterisk next to my list. My number 10 is going to be Death Proof.
Okay, that's number 9 for me.
Another one I probably should revisit. I revisited that one more recently and still kind of felt like, okay, it was better than I when I watched it the first time.
Yeah.
But I still don't love the characters as much as I want to.
Sure.
Again, it's been about 6 years since the last time I revisited the movie. So,
That to me is exactly what it was supposed to be. And the thing is I get what you're saying. I mean, compared to Pulp Fiction or compared to it's definitely his like fun house again Grindhouse. I mean,
this is part of the Grindhouse double feature. Yeah.
So I would look at this more like this was just for fun, and on that level, it has his signature brand of
I thought Kurt Russell was great in that movie.
Cackling,
firecracker. Actually, I thought all the performers were great in that movie.
Firecracker dialogue. Those women, that band of badass women in the car is like it's just fun. It's not deep or particularly meaningful. It's a ride,
right?
And it's done very slickly. And that chase scene at the end is fantastic.
It's great.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But definitely lower on the list in terms of impact for sure. And I think intentionally so. I don't think it was ever supposed to be comparable to some of his greater films. But yeah, I have that as number 9. So
all right. So number 9, your number 9 is Death Proof.
Death Proof. Yeah.
My number 9. My number 10 was Death Proof. My number 9 is going to be Reservoir Dogs because yeah, that's about it.
Yep.
Because
cool.
no, I don't. I've revisited that one a couple times, but I don't really have much of a desire to. I think it's a fun movie. It's a really cool exercise of like single location films.
Yeah.
It set the standard.
Yeah.
I feel like there have been, and this might be blasphemous, there have been other films that have done single location films better since then.
I agree.
And it's a fun time.
It's a fun time. Good performances. It's well written. It's not a bad film by any stretch. But no. I just think in ranking some of his more rich, elaborate, well thought out, contextually.
Well, and it was his first film too, right? I feel like he had a lot of. He's grown tremendously as a filmmaker.
Since then. It shows like the potential. It's like you can watch that and see. Oh, that's early Tarantino, right when he was on the cusp of turning into the great Tarantino that we know.
Yes. Yep. So that's my number 9. Then Reservoir Dogs. What is your number 8, Laron?
Oh, this is surprising for a lot of people. Django Unchained.
Really?
I genuinely love Django Unchained. I just think that for me personally, I felt like the last 23 minutes or so strained anything that was great about it leading on, because I felt like there was a third act there after spoiler alert if you haven't seen it.
Once Christoph Waltz and Leo bite it, the
the
movie
energy is
definitely
gone.
loses a lot.
It loses,
of
and not that there wasn't still things that needed wrapped up in the story.
I mean, Jamie Foxx and Samuel Jackson were great.
Yeah.
And you get to have another epic shootout. That's great. But
it did feel tacked on. It felt like the film knew exactly what it was, and then he ran out of steam there at the end, and hadn't wrapped up things.
It's like he was writing the whole movie for the big end of Act 2 set piece, and then was like, well, that can't be the end. But that was kind of felt like everything was writing to that.
Was writing to that, and then it happens, and then there's still 25 minutes of movie left that I felt could have easily been trimmed up. At least half of that length, just to, it just felt at that point it's strained. It's strained for everything. Like, again, it's still pulpy and fun, but something about that third act just kind of sucked the energy out of it.
Sure.
It's
a very long movie too.
It's a long film, but still great fun. Something I will rewatch too, if not for nothing else, for the performances. So, because Christoph was great, second Oscar for that film. Leo should have been nominated for that.
Leo should have got man.
He was fantastic. One of his best performances.
I agree.
Sure.
I agree. He was robbed. Leo was robbed. I'm still mad about it. Okay. My number 8 is going to be The Hateful Eight. And listen, my initial thought was to place that at the bottom because that movie made me angry.
I remember.
It made me angry. We talked about it earlier. And but I admire the craft. I admire what he was doing with that film. I just wish he didn't look like such an asshole when it was all my takeaway was we're just like, God, life sucks. People are awful, and let's just go ahead and laugh it all off before we die because
that one was definitely punishing. It was punishing for the audience, and
I know it's called The Hateful Eight. That's kind of that was what I was going to say. Point. Yeah. I know, but God, life's too miserable.
What I loved about that is Samuel L. Jackson in particular, his character in that, which from the trailers does not appear to be the lead, and it looks like it's Kurt Russell's film.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like anyone else's film, but Samuel L. Jackson he hams the hell out of that role.
The performances in that movie as a whole are A+. That was, I guess it's a spoiler, but Channing Tatum shows up. That's when he shows up. I mean, he had done some really cool stuff before that, but that was where I saw he really eloquently delivered a Tarantino monologue in a really great way, and I was like, "Wow!"
Again, if you're in a Tarantino movie, he sees something in you because he's not going to put you in his movie if he thinks you're not going to. Because there's a Tarantino brand of dialogue that not everybody can put their mouths around because it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a mouthful. It's quick. It's fast. It's zany. And everything has to be purposeful, and there's a rhythm to it.
Rhythm and cadence to exactly how you say everything. Yeah,
you'll stick it like a sore thumb if you can't do it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So that showed up. I mean, like all performances all around were A+. I did feel like, what's his name? Tim Roth shows up in this movie in a wildly un-Tim Roth role that he does great in, but I was so convinced that Christoph Waltz was supposed to play that role, and he couldn't get
he just couldn't get him.
So I was like, all right, Tim Roth, do your best Christoph Waltz performance, and it's great. It's just really funny.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. Number 7 for me is The Hateful Eight.
Okay.
I prefer it to Django in terms of craft. I think Django I would rewatch more often because it's pulpier, it's more fun. But I think that The Hateful Eight in terms of craftsmanship is more sophisticated and just a better directed film in general. But that was and then also one highlight of that actress's name was nominated for an Oscar. Blonde crazy chick that's in the bounty, the person that's up for the bounty. Jennifer Jason Lee. Jennifer Jason Lee, also an underrated performance. Thought she was fantastic in that nasty performance, but she was also very great. So
yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything with the number rating. My number 7 is going to be Jackie Brown. We've already talked at length about it. It's probably going to rank a lot higher once I rewatch it, but for now, that's in my memory. That's where it goes. So Jackie Brown, number 7. How about your number 6, Laron?
Number 6 also surprises some people. Kill Bill Volume 1. I love this film. I think it's I think when comparably, if you put the two volumes together, they are very distinctly different in tone. You know, one's more of a spaghetti western. This one's more of a very hyper stylized, again, adult cartoon, lots of blood and guts. Lots of fun. Like there's an anime sequence in the middle of it. It's a very inventive film. I love it to pieces. But I prefer the volume 2 to 1 significantly, and we'll see where that ranks later. But
okay.
yeah.
All right. So my number 6 is going to land with Django Unchained. Yeah, I actually agree with your reasoning. That last act is definitely, it loses a lot of momentum. Mm-hmm. It's still fun. I still think it's a ton of fun. Leo's performance and Christoph Waltz, man, that next level stuff. I
still long to see what that film would have been like if Will Smith was the lead.
Yeah. I mean, Jimmy Fox is great.
No, he's great.
He's great, but that could have been Will Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my
God. It would have been more interesting with Will Smith.
I think so,
because
too.
it was so far out of his wheelhouse of anything he'd ever done.
His career probably could have used it, too, to be honest.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Could have did that instead of After Earth. But anyway, cool.
Yeah. But no, I do like Django Unchained. I appreciate that Tarantino was trying to take on history in an interesting way. So some people would argue maybe he didn't succeed. I do think that it was gutsy for him to do that, and I think largely he succeeds other than just like some pacing problems in Act 3. So that's my number 6. What's your number 5, LaRon?
Number 5 is Pulp Fiction.
Ooh, the granddaddy.
The granddaddy of Tarantino. This is the one most people refer to when they talk about Tarantino. It is a brilliant film. I think it's great. I just think over the years, even though my relationship with it, my love for him started there. I've just noticed that the things and sort of his sensibility as a writer and a filmmaker and his vision, I've just seen him do what he did in Pulp Fiction better in other films. And so it's like, obviously it was my first introduction of it, but it's just that I just seen him grow so much since that. And the things I love about those other films obviously predated them, but I think Pulp Fiction is one of those ones, obviously iconic. Definitely there's moments in it that are just, you're never going to forget. Great performances.
But that feels like, I see what you're saying though, that feels sort of like, and this is going to sound, this is only speaking to how brilliant Tarantino is as a craftsman, writer, and filmmaker. That's like base level Tarantino. Like, he's telling an original story, but I mean, we're going to talk about some other films here. I mean, some of the things some of the ideas and themes he tackles using that same style is a lot more interesting and complex, I think.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah. My number 5 is Kill Bill Volume 1. I love the zany action. I love the cartoon. I love how Tarantino refers to it as, in my movie universe, it's a movie that people go to see at the theater. Okay. That's why it's like extra weird.
You said Volume
1. Volume 1. Yeah, Kill Bill Volume 1. Okay. I think it's a fun time. A huge hit for Uma Thurman. I don't really know much to say about it other than I just really enjoy it. I enjoy the...
Also love the female protagonist just being a badass, like, take no shit, been through the ringer and comes out of it fighting with everything in her might, and it's a compelling female role, a very complex, layered, complicated character that is flawed for sure.
Yes,
but that you root for the entire time.
Yep.
So,
no, wholeheartedly agreed. That takes us to number 4, LaRon.
Number 4 is Once Upon a Time in ... Hollywood. Pretty high on the list.
Number 4, yeah.
Pretty high on the list. I don't know if I'm just on a high from watching it, but I just feel like contextually I looked at all of his work and thinking about, everything we've discussed prior. This is like a great culmination of a lot of his best and worst, qualities as a filmmaker. And I feel like it's the most sophisticated thing he's done in a long time, where there's no strain. I can't really pinpoint any particular moment in this that I'm like, I wish he hadn't done that. I didn't like that subplot, didn't like that character, which I can say for almost all of his films. I can find something in there that I didn't care for. I love this from beginning to end. So I have it there as number 4.
Yeah, number 4. I think that's a really good pick because my number 4 is going to be Kill Bill Volume 2, Part 2.
All right.
Part 1's the crazy zany action flick, and Part 2's kind of the meat.
For sure.
1's the flash, 2's the substance. I think that's why they work so well as one film. Obviously Tarantino's the director, so he can say what he wants, but I think it does really work better as one giant epic, more so than it does 2 separate films. But since we're breaking them in half, Volume 2 I feel like delivers on all the promise and the richer and exploring those richer ideas more so than Part 1 for sure. Yeah. I like that one better than Part 1.
Okay.
LaRon Chapman.
Yes.
Number 3.
Number 3 for me is Jackie Brown, top 3. So Jackie Brown, because it is so distinctly different from his other films, it stands out to me because it's like seeing another side of a filmmaker. You know, like this is a different, his idea of a blaxploitation type of film, but taking, different elements. And I felt like this was, it's a unique departure from his regular brand of his regular style in general.
It's just way more subdued. I do remember that. And I think that's why I didn't catch on to it as much as I should. I think I'd appreciate that now. At the time watching it, you were expecting more Pulp Fiction, and you're not getting that.
Yeah, if you're expecting what you normally get from him as a filmmaker, it will disappoint. If you watch it as its own standalone film, and knowing he directed it, sure, but just as a story, just as a cohesive film, it's I think it'll surprise you.
I think so. I'm looking forward to revisiting that one because I think my take's gonna be different.
Yeah.
So my number 3, boiling down to the top 3. Pulp Fiction.
All right.
It's the movie that really helps you get this is Tarantino. This is his voice. This is what he can do.
He tells stories out of form, against form.
He does the break down the acts. He is satirizing violence. He has famous people in all of his roles.
Twist and turns.
The story doesn't go where you think it's going to go. It's about the plot, but it's not really. You think it's about the plot, and then when it's over, you're like, wow, I thought this story was X, and it's not even. No, there's in no way is it X.
Yeah,
it's something totally different. And initially, when you see it the first time, you're kind of shocked. You're like, what was it? Sure. Especially if you aren't seen other Tarantino films. That film, you're like, oh, okay. That once you recontextualize, you kind of appreciate how brilliant it is in a lot of ways. Sure. And everything from the Christopher Walken monologue about the watch, to the sex dungeon, to the date night with John Travolta and Uma Thurman, like all that stuff is just great. The characters are super memorable. Yeah, everything we love about Tarantino can be found in Pulp Fiction.
Absolutely,
and it's one that I take comfort. I've seen it so many times now. I take comfort in revisiting it, even though there's a lot of crazy stuff in it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for
yep.
Sure.
So number 2.
Number 2 for me is Inglourious Bastards. This for me has one of the greatest opening acts in a movie I've seen in like 10 years. I think that opening sequence where and also I can thank Tarantino for gifting the world with the greatness that is Christoph Waltz.
Oh my God.
And I think that opening sequence, because you have zero expectation or what to expect from it, and just the charm and warmth that Christoph Waltz's character comes into it with, and you don't have any idea.
Talk about suspense, man.
Suspense, and suspense that hits you like a bolt of lightning once you realize how much danger you're really in. And that's like how his stories are. They get you so absorbed into the monotony of just the characters and the musings of their ideas and their mind and everything, and then the plot settles in, and you realize that this is a menacing character that was 10 steps ahead of the character of the protagonist at the time, and he knew exactly why he was there, and he went in there with motivation and what have you. So, and the rest of the film is like that. It's almost half of a foreign film.
It happens like there are at least 2 very long sequences in that movie where you're just on the edge of your seat because it's so full of suspense, because you're waiting for the ball to drop. It's not. You know what I mean? Like it's he does that movie operates in like 3 different ways. It's long drawn out scenes filled with suspense where that the stakes are so high.
Yeah. And
if anything goes wrong,
He's Hitchcockian with suspense.
Yes, I feel like he does it the best in Inglourious Bastards.
Inglourious Bastards, yeah, it's punctuated in a really deep way, and also the characters that you think are the leads are not necessarily. You know, there's a female as the lead the whole movie.
Yes. Well, there's the suspense. There's the monologuing. Then there's just the general like character monologuing. You're learning about all these characters that exist in this weird reality, alternate reality he's created, and then there's the scenes of like intense violence and action,
sharp, punctuated.
Yeah.
Shocking violence, that comes out of the. It's like it's coming, but you never know when
or how,
and that's how he does it is never in the way you think. Just never. It's never in a. It's never in a predictable way.
Yeah.
It's always when you least expect it, and it could be during a moment of pin drop silence, or it could be right in the middle of a conversation. So
Right. Yep. Wholeheartedly agree. It's
always earned, I should say. It's always earned because sometimes shock value is a thing. And it doesn't feel that way.
And there are some of his movies, I do think there's shock value for shock value's sake. I think Inglourious Bastards, every time it's implemented, it is well earned and greatly adds value to the story.
Sure.
In some meaningful ways, even. I would go as far as to say Inglourious Bastards is a masterpiece.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely.
Which leads me to my number 2, which is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I am very impressed.
I love these characters. I want to revisit this film, and I like you. I might be high on it. Maybe in 5 years I'll feel differently, but it just really says something that I want to spend 5 more hours. I want to watch 3 more movies with these characters, like right now.
Yeah,
I want to know what they're going to do next. Okay, so. What is Rick Dalton going to do? What's that actually going to turn out to be? What is the next step in their life? He spent so much time writing out these backstories, these characters. You really feel like they're not real people because they feel kind of like they're in that little weird nostalgia reality he's created. But you believe it, and you want to just keep hanging out with them.
Yeah.
And I love the tribute to the golden age of Hollywood. I don't think it's done. I don't feel like it's done in an overindulgent way. I'm not saying that it does not indulge. I'm saying I don't feel like it's like rah rah, look how great movies are in Hollywood is per se, like in the way like maybe some Oscar bait would be. It's more just like a fond recollection or memory, like we've already talked about. So it just landed really well with me. I love Brad Pitt in this movie, maybe more so. Maybe not more so than Lieutenant Aldo Raines, but I love this guy. This guy is...
I think I do, actually. I think this character has a lot more under the surface than... I think the other one is more of a... I don't want to say a caricature, but he's fun as hell,
right.
Sure, of course. But I feel like this character has...
Cliff Booth, yeah.
Cliff Booth, yeah.
Yeah. God, I just love that scene with him and Bruce Lee. It's great in the trailers, but it's even better in the movie.
Yeah. yeah.
So, LaRon, that takes us to number 1. What do you have left? What's your number 1?
My number 1 is Kill Bill Volume 2.
Ooh, Volume 2.
So this is the one. This is the Tarantino film that affected me emotionally, and that's not normally what he draws. He draws reactions. He draws insights. He draws conversation. But Uma Thurman's story now I'm forgetting the character name, but
Beatrice Kiddo, right?
Beatrice Kiddo. That particular character is one of my favorite characters in cinema. I just think she is so compelling. Her journey is fascinating. It's tough. It's long. It's hard fought. And by the time she goes there, I just love the poetry of when she finally is there to kill Bill. Essentially, it's done in the most humane, but also the most twisted way. It's not incredibly violent at all, really.
No.
It's just she found the one thing that could offend him the most, where we could live and say that is atonement right there. Being able to take the one thing that you couldn't learn your whole life and it is ultimately the thing that I used against you to kill you. And I thought that was powerful. And I also think just in general, as you mentioned, separating the volumes, if you consider them 2 films, they're not, but they're definitely tonally very different films. I think that this is the one where the story sets in, and everything that was fun about the volume 1 is given depth, is given
it's more emotional context.
Yeah, everything was understood. Like in volume 1, like okay, we understand something horrific happened to her, but we're dropped right into her fighting to get to these people and not ever really seeing the scene that actually happened and going to that moment and getting, like, again, emotional context for all these different scenes. It just adds so much dramatic weight to that story. And it really, honestly, for me, makes Kill Bill Volume 1 better.
I think so. No, wholeheartedly agree.
And it makes the story come into full form. And so I just think it, and it's rare that a film can do a sequel the film that follows it in terms of production that could make you love what you've seen prior even more, because normally everyone loves the original, more than anything. It's very rare, X2, that you get a sequel that makes you just love everything that happened before. It just gets everything right. So
yeah. So I think that's a great choice, and that's the nice thing about Tarantino. You can kind of move stuff around, and I think everyone would say, yeah, these are all great movies.
For different reasons.
Which one's the best one? Yeah.
Sure.
Which leaves me with my number 1, which is Inglourious Bastards. So Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is fantastic. We'll see how it ranks in the long term, but I will say this. Inglourious Basterds is a movie that has only, I feel like, gotten better with time, that I've appreciated more with time, what I find really interesting about it is despite having all of his signature stylings, his writing, his directing, his like weird tangents in the movie, the violence, all that stuff is there. But I actually think it's his most mainstream movie.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, it's still got different acts.
It's his Grand Budapest.
Yeah, his Grand Budapest Hotel.
But understandably, like most people know that, then they know, Jackie Brown, or,
right? Yeah, and I say mainstream, and just as in like I feel like it's the most digestible of all of them.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's something about like because there is in that movie more so than several of his other movies. I feel like there's a very clear through line plot that hits certain beats.
Yeah,
again, it's unexpected. But in that way, it makes it really easy to rewatch. So that I've seen it several times. So that definitely adds
helps
to it. But I think that the way that and I hope I'm not giving him too much credit, but the way he really turns we think we want to kill Hitler, we think we want to kill the Nazis, and we do, and it's great. It feels great in the moment. But then there's that last shot of the movie where it's Brad Pitt and looking down with a smile, carving the swastika into Christoph Waltz's head, and it
doesn't feel right. It feels
because it's like, are we actually any better? Are we really any better than the Nazis? And I feel like that is a great way to leave.
Yeah,
we watched all this violence and we felt great about it, but at the end you walk away feeling kind of icky, right?
It's how you always say, like, you never get away. Revenge doesn't take away the pain, doesn't take away the tragedy of what happened prior. And like you said, it's almost just like all the horrific things we hated about them just got reincarnated, and now we're wielding the knife, and it makes us look just as bad or just as nihilistic as them. So I think it's a sobering ending where we end with sometimes what we want is not what we want,
right?
Or what we think we
want. Yeah, and I really appreciate the examination, but like I said, I'm not going to be a dead horse, but just the opening act and then the scene in the bar, the underground basement bar, are two of my favorite movie sequences of all time.
Yeah,
they're long, they're drawn out, but things are going to go awry in some way. You don't know how, you don't know exactly why or how, but things are going to go awry some way. Yeah. And the way, specifically the second one, the way that goes awry is so surprising. Yeah. But it makes so much sense. And then of course it ends with graphic violence everywhere.
There's no wasted time in Inglourious Basterds.
Even though it's like almost 3 hours long.
It's almost 3 hours long. That long sequence, and then also we get a really, which I didn't know at the time until I rewatched it recently. That's Michael Fassbender, right?
Yeah, it is Michael Fassbender. Before he was Michael Fassbender. And it's a great performance too. It's like it's just like, oh yeah, he was in this. I love that when that happens, when you've already been introduced to an actor and you never knew. But yeah, it's great. And I think unlike say like Django, where we had that last act where it seems like time could have been used more judiciously, here, even in its lengthy. Well, no, this one felt like, despite us having some amazing moments along the way, Inglourious Basterds really felt like it was building to that final act, like the whole movie. I mean, because as you pointed out, the main character's not who you think it's going to be, and you watch it like, oh, that's her arc throughout the movie.
Exactly.
Versus like Django Unchained, it's like, is it Django's movie? I know he's in the title, but also Christoph Waltz has got this huge subplot, and it feels like Quentin's having a lot of fun writing Christoph and Leo, and kind of, you know what I mean? Like it just. Yeah, that third act loses steam. Whereas this film, I feel like the third act is
it's a culmination to it. Yeah,
exactly.
Sure. It's a difference. Yeah, for sure. Well, there you go.
So there's our rankings. People online, hit us up on the Cinematrop on Twitter and on Facebook at facebook.com/the Cinematropolis with your favorite Tarantino films. Go ahead and rank those. Send those to us. You can tweet me, Masters Talk. Laron, I don't know. I'd plan to talk about spoilers, but here's the thing. We spent a long time talking about that top 10 list that I wasn't expecting to have.
Sure.
So here's the question I have for you.
Yeah.
Should we let the surprise be up to the listeners?
We can let that surprise be up to them. Yeah. They're going to see it. Go see it. Definitely go see it.
I'll just say this. I had someone on my Facebook wall who said, this was a great movie, but I didn't like it because he did a thing similar to what he had done in another movie. And I was like, you're not wrong, but also the reason he did it in this movie is
different.
way different.
It has more impact this time.
I think it does too.
Yeah.
I think so. Because it's more surprising.
It's more surprising.
Well, I shouldn't say more, actually. Maybe not more surprising. But it's still surprising, right?
Yeah, surprising.
And I am all on board with directors using the same tools and methods that they have used in other films in the past, as long as they're doing it to reveal something new and different to the audience.
It does.
And I think that...
We're referring to the final... We're
referring to some of the final sequence of the
Sure.
film. And and I just think that the reason he does things differently, the reasons he does deploys this method tactic here, is it really recontextualizes the whole film again in the same way. It does the same thing, but it means something different. In this movie, we are watching a story unfold, and we think it maybe is supposed to take place.
Sure.
But really, it just kind of adds that, man, weren't things great? It was so great. Things went awry. It's too bad they didn't end up a little differently, because it could have been a lot better.
Yeah. What if life would have been like, had the cynicism essentially that invaded this golden era space? You know, like, what if we turned the leaf? Would life and the world and culture and history have been different? What if
these two neighbors just happened to be around who weren't actually historical figures?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know. Anything else you want to add about that?
No. Go see it. Absolutely.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that has been our review of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It is playing in theaters near you. It'll probably be playing for a while, because also opening weekend, it was Quentin Tarantino's biggest opening of all time, beating out Inglourious Bastards by about $2 million. So congratulations to Quentin Tarantino. Looks like he's still got it.
He still got it.
All right, Laron Chapman. Well, where can people keep up with you and your work until our next review?
The most effective way to keep a hold of me is on Instagram at FreakyAFFilm. So that's the handle there. And you can keep up with all of my productions. You can keep up with the random musings of my life. So. Absolutely.
And you can find me tweeting about all the things film, television, video games over at C Masters Talk. That's letter C, Masters Talk. And you can, of course, find more of our podcasts on the cinematropolis.com or through your preferred podcast app, particularly Spotify. Spotify is great. Check it out. And ladies and gentlemen, I think next month we might be showing our hand here, but Laron, me and you have a guilty pleasure on our hands.
We do. It's very important. It's very important to cinematic history.
It's very important to cinematic history, the most important movie of the summer, surely.
Mostly, definitely. Hands down.
You know, longtime listeners who have listened to me and Laron talk back on the Good Trash Media days will know that we are huge fans of the Fast and Furious franchise.
Yeah.
Except for that last one, which was hot garbage.
Yeah, we just don't talk about it.
No. It actually almost
doesn't exist.
Yeah. And if it did exist, it theoretically would have killed all the momentum that series had going for it up to that point. But so I was done, Laron. I had left that life behind. I was like, I'm just going to enjoy the ones I like.
Wasn't looking back.
I wasn't looking back to this thing that, thank God, didn't happen.
Yeah.
Had it happened, it would have been terrible. But then they said we're going to do a spinoff with The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and Jason Statham. And I was like, I don't think I really care about this. I think we're good. I don't think we really need it. And the bad guy is Idris Elba. And I was like, shit, okay, I'm there.
I'm in.
Take the money.
Damn it, that's what they needed.
That's all they needed.
Didn't make them Bond, but hey, it's fine. It's fine, it's fine.
Hey, if you've seen the trailers for Hobbs and Shaw, the movie we'll be reviewing next, you'll know that Idris Elba doesn't need to be James Bond because he's Superman.
I hope that our intro for this is as entertaining as the movie will be, but we'll see. And they will find out.
We will see. Ladies and gentlemen, catch us next month when we will be reviewing Hobbs and Shaw. Thank you so much for tuning into the Cinematic Schematic, and we'll catch you again next time.